Welcome to Women and Resistance, a powerful podcast where we honor the courage, resilience, and revolutionary spirits of women across the globe. Hosted by Fubara Eneli Esquire and Adesoji Iginla, we uncover untold stories of defiance against systemic oppression, whether colonialism, racism, sexism, or economic injustice. From historic icons like Winnie Mandela and Fannie Lou Hamer to today's trailblazers, we shine a light upon those shaping a more just world. This is a call to honor the past, embrace the present, and build an empowered future. Yes, greetings, and welcome to another episode of Women and Resistance. And before we start, my name again is Adesoji Iginla, one of your hosts, and my co-host, my sister from another mother, is the ever incisive Fubara Eneli Esquire. Sister, welcome.
Hello. Greetings from Luxor, Egypt, formerly known as Wasset, but we are where we are. Yes.
All the way on the mother continent. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I see the spirit is also, bubbling up as well. You're out of the belly of the beast, as they would say. So first things first, we've got to thank you for all you do, because today's episode is going to be mainly a recap of the previous 13 weeks.
13 weeks.
Yeah,
Whoa.
13 weeks. So yes, and the Africans will say it, we're pausing our forward march to reflect. And reflect we shall, because we're going to stitch together the legacies of the 13 women we've previously looked at. And in order to understand how it is they got where they were and to help, navigate where we need to go. So let's begin with the recap. We'll start with those that penned their resistance. And by that, we're looking at the last Titan we did. First, Ama Aita Edo, Bessie Head, and Gwendolyn Brooks. What springs to your mind when you hear those three names?
Great question. Bessie Head, Amaya Taido, and Gwendolyn Brooks, all who lived in different places, all connected by this one struggle that has multiple heads. That's like fighting one beast with multiple heads.
Correct.
Patriarchy, imperialism, colonialism, classism, sexism, racism, all of the isms, so to speak. And what comes to mind is just their focus and their vision and their courage to speak up and to speak loudly and speak often when many others may have been silent. And I would add to that group, actually, Nina Simone, because she wrote the words for some of her music as well, some of the songs that we know her for. So yes, certainly looking at these women using writing as resistance, you see where their work was not just an act of protest. It was, I would say, a prophecy as well, speaking into us what should be, how we should be, encouraging us to remember and to stand in the truth of that remembrance in all of its forms, because we like to focus on, especially being here in Egypt, on the glory days. But there is a reason that those glory days came to the end that they came to, and there are lessons that we should learn from that. And of course, Aikwa Ama would chime in immediately on some of those lessons, but definitely documenting, which they encourage each and every one of us to do. And if you have any form of literacy, writing should be something that we all embrace. Memory, going back, retrieving those memories, documenting them. And then, of course, using your voice to speak our own truth and to subvert Eurocentric narratives, which unfortunately make up what they call the canon. which all of us who get educated through this Western system are deeply immersed in and are impacted by, even when we don't realize it. So, yeah.
So let me pose this question. How would you say literature becomes the battlefield for identity? Just not specifically those three, but in order to ascertain who they were as humans. And you know what they say, he who writes the history gets to narrate the present, the future, and the past. So how have they used literature as a means of resistance?
I think what they clearly demonstrate is that the tools for resistance are varied as they should be, and that we all have a tool. And as we talk about some of the other women that we've also covered, and so certainly using literature, writing their own experiences, writing the experiences of other people, women in particular, but of the cultures in which they are a part of, writing in such a way that people can easily grasp and hopefully apply. So whether you look at Gwendolyn Brooks with her poetry, We Real Cool, that is one example. Or Amai Taido talking about relationships, something that is very relatable to a lot of people, but looking at it from the perspective of women and African women, a voice that is not heralded as much, and giving it that legitimacy, giving it that platform. Or Bessie Head, who clearly, I encourage everybody to go back, and if you haven't, go back and watch each of those episodes. But that woman lived a life that many of us would not want to live, fought through from birth all kinds of trauma, of course, dealt with mental health illness, was in exile. Many of these women were exiles at one point or the other, had the wherewithal to document that, which I think allows people to feel seen and heard. And I think a big part of healing is to not feel like you're crazy, because you feel like your experience is just yours, and maybe you're not seeing things the way you should, or maybe you're making mountains out of molehills. And so to read their work, to have someone else give voice to your victories, your triumphs, but also your pain, your struggles, I think is very affirming. And Peggy is asking which was my favorite. I'm going to assume you're asking which is my favorite of the writers, out of these three. Yeah, these three. Like I said, I would also add Nina Simone. I don't know that I can pick a favorite, just because they all told their own truth in different ways. I would say that I was very struck by Bessie Head's story and her resilience. I think a lesser human being would have just ended life early. Would have just like, okay, let me take the path of least resistance. But she fought to the very end. And for her to have been able to get published at that time with all the obstacles, and yet to write in ways that just brought her words to life. She had a vibrancy to her words, and it was very multi-layered. You could feel it on so many levels. And even though her life was incredibly hard, you did not necessarily feel hopelessness from reading her. There was just this sense of, we fight on, right? You've got breath in your body. You don't give up. And they all suffered in their own ways for speaking up in the ways that they did. Some more than the others. Of course, Gwendolyn Brooks lived long enough to be celebrated in certain ways, and perhaps had a little bit more support in terms of her intimate relationship with her husband. But yeah, so if again, hard to say favorite, but if I have to say the one that really, truly, every moment reading her was just like holding my heart in my hand, would be Bessie Head, for sure.
Really painful, because she also speaks to most of the themes that we're currently experiencing on alienation, immigration, mental health.
women as second-class
a
citizens,
second-class citizen. So she was
being
she just
biracial, mental health issues,
exactly.
poverty. Poverty was a big part of it.
Yeah, yeah,
Going hungry,
yeah,
literally.
yeah, yeah.
Of course, something that Polymori also experienced. Yeah.
And we'll come to Polymori. With regards to
Who was another writer.
yes,
And we definitely could have included her in that bunch. She was definitely a prolific
but
writer as a poet, but also
there's
even
an
her
angle
legal
I'm trying.
analysis.
There's an angle I'm trying to bring her in on. I mean,
Okay.
she crosses so many of the themes, but there's one angle where you would see where Polymori comes in. With regards to this, I suppose the question is, which is what Peggy was alluding to there. What lessons can writers today learn from these four writers, including Nina Simone, that would say this is how you blend art with activism?
I would say then we'll say 5 writers because we'll include Pauline Murray. They actually even oh my God, Batal, she also wrote poetry as well.
Yeah.
So these women were definitely multidimensional. I would say that art cannot be for art's sake. I think that that's a very Eurocentric perspective. We did not. I don't know. You speak Yoruba. Do you guys necessarily have a word for art? We basically
No, art
produce
is
things that were functional and that were necessary for our survival or our storytelling, our chronicling, our exhortation of each other, and remembering the past and reminding people in the present and the future. So I would say that in this day and age where we everybody needs clicks, and as I say that, like, subscribe, share,
yep.
put your
all
notification
the
bell
good
on,
stuff. Yeah,
all the
yep.
good stuff. That these people weren't just like using Chat GPT and saying, okay, what will sell? What would be salacious enough that people are going to be like, oh, I want all the tea? They were writing for liberation. Their writing, their works were an act of not just resistance, but trying to reclaim who we are as human beings in the world. So for, people who know or want to develop that art of writing, whether it's literature or songs, whatever, legal documents, whatever it is, I would say that it wasn't just, I would take the liberty to say that their work wasn't just writing for writing's sake, but that they had a vision and that they had a purpose to it.
Yeah,
And we should all find the purpose that drives the things that we do.
You are listening to Women and Resistance with Aya Fubara Eneli Esquire and Adesoji Iginla, where we honor the voices of women who have shaped history through courage and defiance. If you're finding these stories inspiring, take a moment to subscribe, share, and support this platform. Together, we amplify the voices that deserve to be heard. Now, back to the conversation. You said use the Yoruba as an example of how art is. You know how you go into a museum and you see a drum and the drum is put behind a show glass. You see
Funny you say museum because I think, oh my God, we've been to, in 3 days, I think we've been to maybe 7, 8, 9 museums, whatever. Yeah.
I mean, so you see the drums behind the show glass, you're looking at this like, oh, this is what they used to do. The big drum, the little drum, the pestle and the mortar. Those
we're functional.
To the Europeans, they're functional. Exactly. They're functional. The stool that you sit on, the millstone, those are they're tools. Yeah. But you go to any European museums, those stuff are now put in museums. Like, this is stuff that it's akin to us putting a toaster behind a show glass. So
which they will do to show the evolution of toaster ovens or something. Yeah, they will do. But in the time that the person was actually creating the toaster, it had a function. Now, do we, led by spirit, set create it in a certain way or engrave it with certain things and all of that? Yes, but for us at that time, it wasn't, oh, I'm looking forward to my piece being hung in somebody's house. It was, it had a purpose to it. Yeah.
Okay, speaking to purpose, we go to the next group. Well, freedom fighters in flesh and fire. The next group contains the likes of Winnie Mandela, Queen Idia, and Empress Tatu Betu. Before you even go delve into who they are, let's use the Peggy test again. Which would you consider to be your favorite of the three?
You can't, again, it's like define favorite. I don't have a favorite. Each of these women in their own time rose up to meet the challenges of their day. So whether you look at Queenie Dia, who invoked music and spirituality and military strategy and nurturing of her son and bringing together her community and actually physically fighting for sovereignty. I would say all of these women in one shape, form or the other were fighting for sovereignty. Again, just used all the talents that she had and directed them towards a purpose. So, you often talk about, let's say the power of the sun. And yeah, and it's really hot here in Luxor, but the sun just shining on you. Yeah, I guess if you're out there a long time, you could get sunburnt or tanned or whatever. But it's not until you really direct the rays of the sun. So if I take a magnifying glass, if I'm walking around with a book or a sheet of paper, no problem out in the sun. I take a magnifying glass and I direct those rays in a very purposeful way on a sheet of paper and I can set it on fire. And so what I see with these women is just being very directed in what they were doing. Warfare, statecraft. Definitely, when you talk about Taitu Batul, I mean, this woman was thinking strategically, thinking about economics, banking, thinking about where do we receive our guests and how do we make sure that we have our own space and we don't have to go to a foreigner's place to meet, and so set up their first hotel, which is still in existence, and navigating some of the preconceived notions about what women can and cannot do in that whole purpose, and not losing who she was as a woman, whatever that might mean to different people. So these were all of them very much cultural symbols in their own right. And definitely, if you talk about Winnie Mandela and again, what she endured, I don't know how many of you have maybe spent a weekend alone and you're like, oh my God, the loneliness, it's quiet, whatever. Now think about 491 days in solitary confinement away from everybody you know and love. You could have your kids there in a sparse living environment, and ended up, of course, being known as basically the mother of the movement and being the guiding force behind the elevation of Nelson Mandela, who obviously was fighting. And we know his story, in prison for 27 years, but there were others as well. But she's the one who kept that drumbeat going, making sure that the world did not forget him. And I would say obviously played a very significant role in ultimately the apartheid movement, or apartheid being, we would say, at least temporarily displaced, hopefully permanently, but at least temporarily displaced. And so you see Tatu Batul, Queenie Dia, Winnie Mandela, all of them defending sovereignty, all of them really trying to use their gifts, their talents, their voice, all of their thinking abilities to galvanize people towards their liberation of their people. And so in terms of a favorite, can't do it. Just can't do it. Well, the reason we're studying all of these women is to draw inspiration from each and every one of them and to understand how, whatever circumstances you are dealing with, there's never a need to completely be hopeless. Even though things may look that way, you just keep fighting towards the vision that you have. And so the question is really, what vision do we have for ourselves? Do we really believe we can be free? And are we then doing what we are capable of to work towards that ultimate freedom? And I would say many of us aren't. Most of us aren't. But these three women definitely embodied it in different ways at different times, regardless of the obstacles that they faced.
Okay, I suppose, the fact that we've done this 13 women probably answers the question I'm going to ask. Well, I'll ask it anyway. You probably have a different take. What do we gain, or what might we have lost from erasing these women from our military and political history?
Well, you think of if you can put 100,000 people to fight towards or work towards a particular aim, and you decide, not only am I not going to use the 100,000, I'm going to use 50,000, but part of the work of those 50,000 is to suppress the other 50,000. Very divided focus. You can see how that would absolutely weaken you, how their ideas that will never surface because you did not give them room, but how you're also expending your energy in ways that are counterproductive. And so, in erasing women, we absolutely give over our power to those who choose to oppress us. You've set yourself up for failure in the sense that you have weakened yourself. Like I'm going to fight and I tie one hand behind my back. Well, how's that supposed to work? And when that hand is trying to undo itself to fight, then the other hand is actually also preoccupied, not just with fighting the enemy, but also keeping that hand tied. At some point, you're going to be in a place where your enemy can then just completely overcome you. It might sound simplistic, but I think that to a large degree, that explains where people of African descent are today all over the world. Is we have not played to our strengths. We have actually worked against each other, and continuing to erase these women, one propels this idea of what is all that can be. And so men continue to perform in this way that is not helpful to us, is actually harmful to us. It allows women, because a lot of times people who are oppressed buy into their own oppression. So it allows women to feel like, yes, this is the role that has been
Equated to me.
Yeah. And not only am I going to play that role, if any woman decides that she's going to try and break out of that mold,
Pulled back into
yeah,
life.
I'm going to make sure that I pull her back, because how dare you? And so again, my whole focus in life is how do we exert our full humanity? How do we have our own sovereignty? How do we create a society that is equitable for all? And we can't do that by erasing ourselves, erasing our strengths, erasing our struggles, erasing our voices. And that's what we've done, obviously, for African people as a whole to some extent, but specifically for women of African descent. We just have not told the stories in a way that would allow everybody to draw inspiration and to build on it. So it's like you're trying to build a house and every day you're starting the foundation again because you keep destroying the foundation. When and how will that house ever be completed?
Speaking of the push against erasure, which brings us to the next segment. We're talking about the diasporic flames. Now, these are three women, the two Amy's, Amy Ashwood Garvey, Amy Jack Garvey, and Andrea Bluin. So the tie here is, what's the role of diasporic women in the African and larger African liberation struggle?
What is their role?
Yeah.
To be their whole human selves And again, I apologize if that sounds simplistic, but as a woman myself, obviously, but woman who happens to be a mother of multiple children. I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister. So many times the prevailing
Narrative.
message that you get from society is there's a way you have to be. And I know I often hear of, women, particularly women who are mothers, talk about I lost myself. Well, you lose yourself, then how are you going to lead? Yeah, how does that work? And so thinking about these women, I'm thinking about their shared willingness to sacrifice personal comfort for collective freedom. I'm thinking about them not restricting themselves to geographical
Okay.
locations or to just, hey, let me achieve personal, just do what I need to do for myself, but willing to make the sacrifices to organize, and to reach across geographical boundaries. And so what you see with these women is like, let's take Andre Bluin for a moment. Working in Congo, she didn't come from Congo, but understanding that our struggle is one and the same wherever we might be, and the willingness to task herself intellectually and then to present herself as willing to do this work that could cost you your life at any moment in time. I don't know if that answers your question.
I mean, to buttress your point with regards to Andre Bolin, she also participated in galvanizing the Guineans to say no to the Pact of Continued Colonialism in Guinea in the 1958, and is the beginning of what has now transpired into total African liberation, at least in the French-speaking part of Africa. So she is a foremost name there. She also contributed to the independence movement, at least the earlier part of it, of Congo,
Yeah.
being advisor to Patrice Lumumba. Unfortunately, he met, an unfortunate demise. So
his demise has been the demise of Africa.
yeah,
There's really no other way to say it.
yeah.
But yeah, please carry on.
And so to the Gavis, the
Yes.
first and the
Yes.
second Gavis, they continued they stuck to their roles regardless of how circumstances threw them into it. They knew what was required and they carried forth.
And again, what you see with both Amy's is that Pan-Africanist focus, that willingness to carve out space for women, that willingness to work with people again across geographical borders. Not to say, oh, I'm Jamaican, this is all I'm concerned about, but really to understand that our issues are interconnected wherever we are as Black people, as people of African descent across the diaspora. And to carry on that work despite, again, difficulties. None of these women were wealthy. They struggled with the everyday issues that most of us struggle with, but stayed very singularly focused as well on this liberation work, and not saying, well, it's for somebody else to do, but to put themselves to that work. And so, like with Amy Ashwood Garvey, okay, yes, marriage is over, but the work continues.
Needs to
I
be
still hold on to these ideals. With Amy Jack Garvey, like even with her difficulties with Marcus Garvey, still believing so much in his philosophies that she's like, she was the one who actually put it all in print
compiled. Yeah.
and kept that idea of Garveyism alive. And of course, we know the UNIA, as we covered, um, it's probably the most successful Pan-African organization that we've ever had. Yeah. And again, when we erase those stories, we don't build on their work. We're always starting over. And if you're always starting over, how long are you going to live to be able to then complete the work? We've got to be able to build on the work each other has done.
Okay. So you spoke to the staying focus of these women despite the lack of resources, which lends itself to the next group of women. Now we're talking Nina Simone, Florence Griffin Joyner. They didn't have resources, but they knew what they wanted and they stuck to it. In what ways would you say staying power, the focus, is one of the Black women's major attributes when it comes to resistance?
Okay, so again, I gotta add Polly Murray to that list because poverty and rejection from places. She and Nina share the story of, hey, we're good enough. We applied to this school, and in her case, it was in Polly Murray's case, it was very clear she was denied because of race. Nina didn't necessarily get a letter that spoke to that, but there was that sense. And of course, after they die, now you want, they tried to give Polly
A
an award,
posthumous, yeah.
honorary degree.
Yeah,
No, when she was still alive and she was like, to hell with y'all, I don't want it. Nina, they did it, I think, posthumously.
posthumously,
But
yeah.
I don't know. So, for instance, in the case of Nina Simone, initially she wanted to be this classical pianist. She knew she had this gift. Of course, some doors were closed to her that would have been opened if she had certainly been a white male. Maybe easier to walk through if she had been a white female. But in that Black body, in that dark skinned Black body, she wasn't a Lena Horne looking type or Dorothy Dandridge looking type. Things were a little bit tougher for her. That caused her to veer into a different way, way of living, starting to play music in clubs. And then it's like, hey, you got to sing. It's like, okay, well, sing I will then. And that took off. But what you see with each and every one of them, again, is resilience. One door closes, my life does not end. Let me find another way. I may still grieve over what I couldn't get or do. So Polly Murray graduates top of her class, Howard Law School. The at that time the custom was that person gets to go to Harvard Law. Harvard Law says nope. Now the reason why we're not taking you is not race, it's that you're a woman. So she's already been rejected for race. Now she's been rejected for being a woman. I mean, it's like, what the
Exactly.
HELL, whatever. But these women having this fire within them to do something with their lives, to do something with their gifts, just kept going from door to door, and in some places just going ahead and creating their own doors.
Yeah.
A great personal sacrifice to themselves. Again, you look at Nina Simone, and then you see these recurring themes of also mental health issues for the latter, for women who are in more recent times where we can document that, or where they spoke to those issues and yet not quitting, like falling down but getting back up. So Polly Murray, literally being assigned to a camp because she was not eating well enough, and it's like, we need to get you somewhere where you're getting some meals. And of course she gets kicked out of there because she's reading a Marxist book, which God forbid. But persisting so much that they changed the world that they lived in. So whether you look at Paulie's impact on the civil rights movement for people of African descent, which then opened the doors for every other group, look at it for women's rights, look at it for what she never really got to experience, enjoy, transgender rights. Absolutely a trailblazer in so many ways, but it required never giving up on yourself, even when you get knocked down over and over again. So we saw that with Nina and with Flojo. There's some people who would say, why would you include Flojo in a conversation on women and resistance? I mean, look around the sports world now, whether it's tennis and but particularly and see how Black women now are able to express themselves.
Yeah.
And it was really Flojo was one of the main people, not the only one, because she built on some, the work of other people as well. But just breaking open those doors to say, yes, I am an athlete, but I'm also an artist. She actually was an artist.
Yeah.
And I also have a voice. I'm not just, an entertainer on the track field or whatever, I will express my beauty, my femininity. I can still do my job on this track. And I have other things in life. And she actually talked about what she wanted the next phase of her life to be, but unfortunately passed away much too young from some health issues. And so the prevailing story again is, who are you? What gifts have you been given? How are you going to use them? How are you going to develop them? Because all of these women were also incredibly disciplined. Think of the work that it takes to learn to become a classical pianist. And then in the case of Nina Simone, the very unique sound that she created, where it's like some classical music and it's, folksy and it's, some would call it jazz. And she's putting it all of this together and it sounds like nothing that has been before she even gets into speaking her truth through her lyrics and doing it so boldly as to say, no, you didn't just come here, or maybe you thought you came here for me to entertain you, but I'm also going to educate you. I'm also going to make you feel uncomfortable. And Flo Jo, the same thing. Yeah, you may have come to just see me run, but I'm coming to say I'm a whole human being. And these are other aspects of me. And I'm going to let them all shine and flow through. And Paulie Murray, priest, poet, lawyer, activist, just amazing. And so for us women, I would say, and for men, because everybody should be inspired by these stories. A phrase that I used to hear a lot, and some of you probably still hear it a lot, and you can share in the chat how it impacts you, is jack of all trades and master of none. And there was this sense that, which I think is a very Eurocentric viewpoint, that you have to be so specialized and just do one thing. But you even look at, if I can evoke some men, people like Benjamin Banneker, who was a farmer and he had the almanac, but he also built a clock and he also understood cosmology, and then he also understood architecture and design, and he wrote poetry. I mean, it's like we can be everything that we can imagine ourselves to be. And we don't have to be one dimensional. And even when the world is trying to put you in one box and say, this is all you can be, having the courage to refuse to be in that box, which can also inspire other people to allow themselves
be free,
fully develop, to be free. Yes. But it's the discipline. These people got to the levels that they were not because it was easy, but because they were willing to do the work without and before any lights, any so-called notoriety or fame, and even afterwards. Because for many of them, they did not gain all of the accolades, that maybe that they were due, or if they did, it didn't last for any variety of reasons. And I think some of us quit too soon. Some of us are not disciplined in the way that they should be. And I'm talking to myself as well. We make too many excuses. We put limits on ourselves. And these women, part of their resistance was taking the limits off, refusing to subject themselves to the limitations that others would impose on them, and certainly not to impose limitations on themselves.
So what you're advocating for there is a bit of a rebellious streak in this women, which brings us to the next.
Well, only rebellious because we live in a world that doesn't want us to live free. Otherwise, why would me expressing who I am
be considered rebellious?
So threatening to you that you've got to squash it. Yeah.
So, on that fairly innocuous spirit, we go to the next segment, which is titled Legal Minds and Rebel Hearts. You've always wanted to speak about Polymori, which is, she comes in this group. And so it's Polymori and Lucy Parsons.
Lucy Parsons. Yes.
So
you want to refresh the listeners on who Lucy Parsons was?
Okay, so Lucy Parsons there's a book. The best description is the one that the Chicago police labels her. She was considered more dangerous than 1,000 rioters. She fought for workers' rights free speech and was against state repression during the Haymarket Affair. For those who don't know, that was the beginning of what you now know as the trade unions. So despite her erasure, her anarchist vision still lives on. So, which brings us to this question. How do women navigate the movements they find themselves in, especially when men are at the core of these groups, which is one thing Lucy Parsons sort of experienced pre and post the Haymarket Affair.
Yes, and again, for those who are just hearing her name, go research this lady. For those of us who have any labor rights that we have right now, an 8-hour work day, the right to take breaks, those kind of things did not just come about because capitalists were being benevolent. They had to be fought for. Every right that any of us benefits from today, someone sacrificed for it. And so for us to now enjoy those rights and then to feel, oh, I'm so comfortable, I don't need to speak up because I'm afraid I'm going to lose them. That is incredibly selfish. What you see with all of these women is resistance through performance. They were out there performing, putting body and presence, speaking out. All of them, especially in those in the more recent times, surveilled by the
Authorities.
systems of their time. No, here for those in the U.S., definitely the FBI all over them. Yet choosing to disrupt and to disrupt publicly. Right? Not just behind closed doors, not just on the internet, you know, all of our internet
Keyboard warriors.
but in real life, you're doing absolutely nothing. Well, I shouldn't say absolutely, but not doing as much as you can do. These women demonstrated a willingness to pay the cost for being exceptional, both in all spaces, but certainly in what would be considered white spaces. They were just like, no, if we're going to live, then we're going to live for something. And I think it was Martin Luther King Jr. who said, until you find what you're willing to die for, I'm paraphrasing, you're not yet living. And so what is it that we are willing to die for? And so certainly Pauline Murray, with the work that she did, and eventually even going into the priesthood, was about trying to make sense of what would be the pathway for peace and liberation for people. And of course, became the first African American woman bishop, I believe, in her in Episcopalian church. Yes.
Yeah.
And Lucy Parsons, definitely one would argue ahead of her times, but then again, if you study history, not at all, because there were women before her who also fought in their own ways. We're going to be next week, I think, talking about one of them, who is one of the female pharaohs here in ancient Egypt. And so, again, the lesson I take from these women is willingness to stand for something and to understand that it takes sacrifice to achieve whatever it is. There's a quote that comes to mind: let each woman remember her duty to liberate her land, her spirit, and her people. And that's what I see each of these women doing in their own way, in their own time.
Okay, so one final question on that group. What would you say Lucy Parsons and Pauline Murray did to speak out against double oppression? I'm sure you know what I mean by that. One, they were women, and they were also Black.
Well, in the case of Lucy Parsons, I don't think she ever claimed that she was Black.
Yeah, but
she's an interesting character.
Yeah. I mean, she passed for white, as they would say, but to a larger extent, she is pigeonholed in.
She's definitely considered non-white.
Yeah.
Many people were very suspicious of her story. So ask the question again. What the double oppression that they were dealing with, and
how did they deal with the double oppression?
Probably the best that they could in that time. Lucy Parsons,
she went into the clergy. She was effectively the first face
No, you mean Polly?
Polymorph, yeah.
Yeah, she did. But she went into a lot of spaces where women were told they shouldn't be. So we know her story at Howard Law School is that she was basically fighting the black men in the group. It's like, wait a second, how are we supposed to be fighting Jim Crow? But at the same time, you guys are excluding me from things based on me being female. And of course, she ended up graduating number one in her class, and they did not want to make her Chief Justice, which was the norm for whoever was number one. And then eventually people capitulated. And even with Brown v. Board of Education, initially, for the most part, people like Thurgood Marshall did not give her her flowers for the role that she played in crafting that argument on which desegregation really was argued and won. And we know that Ruth Bader Ginsburg did give her credit when she used Pauli Murray's argument to advance women's rights. But even that was kind of buried because, hey, we're going to hold up the white looking woman. We know she was Jewish, but we're not going to speak to this other lady. So that's Pauli Murray in the sense of Lucy Parsons. Maybe that was the reason why she felt, being married to a white man gives you a certain level of protection. But I think she got to a place where it's like, to hell with all of y'all, especially after her husband was executed. I will express myself sexually in the way that I want to. So there were some, stories about her in
Salacious
that
stories.
sense. Her sexual freedom, even though she was preaching, purity for women, so to speak. But it was also her bold in speaking up in so many forms and writing. She also was a writer, writing. You can go and read her speeches and read her writings, making her arguments and forcing in certain spaces for her voice to be heard. So there are a number of occasions where, yeah, she's invited, but you're not to speak. And she's like, nah, I got something to say. I'm going to say it. And I think there are many times, and I'm speaking for myself here, where I'm in spaces where it's like, okay, don't ruffle any feathers, don't rock the boat. This is not the time, and you talk yourself out of seizing the moment.
Yeah.
To speak up. And I think the lesson from these women, not I think, I know that the lesson from these women is the time is now. I mean, yes, you move with wisdom, but the time is now. And Black women of African descent should not have to fight for quote unquote the race and be silent on patriarchy. Nor should we go to the other side where all we're doing is fighting for women's rights and humanity and then ignoring the issue of race, which is very important. And we can take it further for those who might want to fight for gay, lesbian, bisexual rights, not to say, okay, well, then this is my one thing and I'm going to be quiet on race and gender. That again, if you're functioning as your full self,
you can do
where
all of it.
does I'm African stop and I'm woman begin? I'm all of those things all at the same time, all the time. And so, yeah, unfortunately, we then find ourselves having to fight on multiple fronts, but fight we must. Otherwise, we lose every battle.
Okay. So we're fast reaching the close.
Goodness.
Yeah, it's been an hour. In all these 13 women, what would you say you personally have learned? You personally have learned from these 13 women?
Wow. I would say the first thing that I've learned is there is nothing that I'm dealing with that is brand new. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you've ever had a pity party or if you've ever felt I can't, you go and read these women's stories and you're like, wait a second, what am I complaining about? We have so many of us, we have access to so many more opportunities than they did. And look at what they were able to accomplish. And we have their stories to encourage us and to build on. And so the biggest thing for me has been now when things happen to me, and this is, even as I say this, it's a real reminder for me. Either when things happen to me, not wanting to give up or not giving, let me rephrase, not giving into the feeling of giving up. But to say, okay, this is actually not unique to me. Women who look like me have been fighting this for centuries. Don't take that as hopelessness again, but to know you're not alone, you're not crazy. And yes, expect opposition, because if these women were opposed in the way that they were, what makes you think it should just be
Easy for
easy
you.
peasy
Yeah.
for you? So that's the first lesson I would say, is just understanding that whatever I'm dealing with is not unique, and it's not unique to me, and that other people have faced it and found ways to still make an impact, and so can I. The other thing that I take away from these women is being about the work and not just the talk. Like, these women put in the work, they put in the effort, and they did it consistently, and they did it against all kinds of
Yeah.
odds. And so, same thing is, what are you doing with your 24 hours? Yes, we know you should sleep because your body needs rest to rejuvenate and all of that. But what else are you doing? And we are in a society, I think now, where, and again, I should stop saying I think. We're in a society where I know that so many of us are distracted. The dumb stuff like, oh, women love to shop, retail therapy. Like, really? Really? Capitalists got you in the
The truth.
got your
In a
head all
chokehold.
messed up,
Yeah.
and you're going to work so hard, and all you're going to do is to feel better, is to give it away and to buy and buy and buy, yeah.
Only to be
So,
told you still need some more.
yes. So the discipline, having a purpose for your life. Like, each of these women, even though it might have taken them a while to figure it out. You look at Andre Bluin, how she started and how she ended look very different, right? At one point, kind of chasing snow bunnies, because that seemed like the path to a decent life, which was understandable given, again, like Bessie Head, her incredibly traumatic childhood. But then realizing, no, there is a purpose for my life, and I'm willing to risk my life, which she did, to fulfill that purpose. And even after the world forgets me, even after what I've done, like, I'm still finding a way. So she still wrote this biography, which makes all the difference. So again, whether we're looking at Ahmad Taido, whether we're looking at Nina Simone, whether we are looking at Winnie Mandela, Gwendolyn Brooks, all of these women that we've mentioned, these are women who we're like, beyond the pain, there is purpose. And I'm focused on that purpose. Whatever path I have to take, glass I have to walk over or crawl over, this is the work that I came to do. So I ask myself, what is the work that you've come to do? And I'll share this in very practical terms. I know as we wrap up here, I'm in Kemet in Egypt. It's not an inexpensive trip. And while I've been here, there have been multiple opportunities to do some other things, buy this or experience this other thing, or even lunch. So our initial amount that was paid covers breakfast and dinner, but lunch, we're typically out at sites and everything. So lunch is, you pay for
Your
yourself.
discretion. Yeah.
Now, I pretty much just looked at the cost of what lunch is, and being very transparent here. And I'm like, we've got salaries of like 28 people to pay each month. For those of you who are aware, I assist with a library and a school in Opobo in Nigeria. This one lunch that I'm going to have will cover the salary for a teacher for a whole month. I can skip lunch. Like, my body would be just fine eating 2 meals a day. Those are literally like for some people, it's
Sacrifices.
like, oh, that's
Yeah.
not a big sacrifice. You already flew and you went to Egypt, and how many people get to do that? I get it. But for me, it's those simple things. It's just like, okay, this money could cover a salary, and that person's salary is feeding a family. That person's salary is allowing them to come to school and to educate these kids. So we're going to skip lunch. We're going to skip some of the frou-frou things that we do. And I'm not saying that everybody
It's not
needs to do that.
necessary.
Everybody needs to
It's
figure out what
just
their thing
priorities.
is.
Yeah.
But I'm just giving an example of how that shows up in my life. It's like, yeah, I could watch TikTok or watch some movie, or I can read this book because I need this information, because I need to be able to communicate some things. I can sleep or work on my business, or I can go knock on door to encourage people to go out to vote. So we each need to be asking ourselves, what are we doing with this life that we have, and what legacy do we want to leave? And I don't know that any of these women necessarily sat down and said, oh, well, this is the legacy I want to live. But I think that maybe they did. That maybe they said, you know what, I'm going to die standing up. I'm going to stand up for something.
Probably so.
Whether the world remembers me or not, whether the world celebrates me or not, is not relevant. What's important is I made my life count. I didn't just come here and eat and breathe and die. Trying to be a little classy about it, but yeah. So what are you going to do with this one life you've been given? Yeah.
So would you care to share with the audience what goes into your preparations for preparations every time we have a new person, bearing in mind we're going to be speaking about Hepsisuit next week.
Chipsit next week.
Yeah.
You know what? I actually am a little concerned every time we choose someone to cover. So some of you have heard this story. I love history, and I also do a lot of motivational speaking, and most of my books are along that self-help, line. And what I wanted to do was to combine both. I wanted to find a way to share history and encouragement for women, and also motivate us to do a little bit more, right? So my idea, okay, I'm not going to say the idea because somebody's going to listen and then go do it before I execute. But anyway, so I started to read and study and take notes on these women. And of course, I was having a conversation with you. You're like, oh, we should do this. And I was like, oh, I'm not ready. Da, da, da. But anyway, so here we are. We're doing it. And I don't know how many episodes we're in now. Like, how many women have we covered?
That's close 26 now.
26 women. Yeah. Is amazing. So anyway, let me start with the very first one, Billie Holiday.
Yeah.
So
with the flower.
Part of my process, of course, I'm reading their biography. If they wrote anything about themselves, I want to start with that, right? Then I might read what other people are saying about them. Now, in the case of Billie Holiday, there are so many biographies on her. So I think I may have read like 4 or so, like skimmed through some more. I watched every documentary on her. I basically immersed myself in her music and her performances for weeks. If I'm driving, I'm listening to Billie Holiday. If I'm going to sleep, I'm listening to Billie Holiday. And what happens, which was not what my original intention was, is that I feel like their spirit just comes and sits with me, right? And so in the case of Billie Holiday, I was actually racing back from court to get home in time to do this recording with you. And there's no one in the car but me. And I swear I hear this voice like, so what, you're just going to get on there and just talk about me? And I was like, what? You're not even going to wear a gardenia? And I'm like, are you serious? Really? What? And so as I'm driving, I start calling florists in my area to see if anyone has a gardenia. Nobody has a gardenia. I stop at this store that sells fake flowers and stuff. They don't have a gardenia. She's like, you're just not, you can't just, do you know who I am? I'm Billie Holiday. So I ended up just getting a white flower. And I get home and I'm rushing. She's like, so I'm looking for like a strapless gown and the diamonds and all of this stuff. And I did not know what to expect. I had my notes of what I was going to share about her life. But I really feel like with each of these women, they just rise up. Now I'm not a trained actress, so I can't necessarily do their voices, and no, I don't have, a wardrobe a budget and all of that. But each of them, I feel, wants me to. So the goal was to speak about them, not to speak in their voice.
Yeah.
But Billie Holiday got the ball rolling, and she was just like, "No, you're going to embody me." And that has been the case. Now with some of them, like when we did Nina Simone, I was like depressed for a week, depressed and angry at the same time. Her energy is very strident. Like she's still fighting wherever she is.
Watch her interviews alone.
Yes,
It
like
comes
she's
out.
taking no prisoners. She's saying it as it is. And I had to like, okay, bottle that and save that for when we talked and not use that on my kids or my husband or in court, that kind of thing. Or like when we did Nanny, like I really feel like their spirits rise up in me. And sometimes it's a little scary because I may not be able to control it. Like, who was it that I did? And I was trembling the whole time. And I actually had to do a cleanse after it to like, okay, you got to leave me. And I know this sounds kind of crazy to some people, but think about it. Like if you go to church and there's certain music played, those of you who just watch Sinners, you feel a spirit come over you. These things are real. So it's a lot of reading, a lot of reading.
Yeah. 3 times.
And some of them are a little bit more obscure, so it's harder to find information about them. So it's research, and then you've got to double check because there's some false information out there as well. For those who have recordings or movies or documentaries have been done on, it's watching, sitting, listening to what is shared, but what isn't, like whose voice is not heard as well, in the case of Andre Bluin as well. But then also having fun with them. Like I wore the sunglasses for Andre Bluin because that woman was, oh my God.
You held a cigarette for
smart. I had the cigarette with Lauren Hansberry. Like, this is a lot of work. It's a lot of work to just hold that cigarette. This is crazy. So it's been fun. It's been enlightening, but it's also been, I hear that song from Whitney Houston. Well, I guess it was Shaka Khan first. I'm every woman. It's all in me. Yeah. Listen, not taking anything away from men because you guys are all amazing as well. But women, when you really think about who we are and how our bodies are made and what we're able to do, the only word that comes to mind is divine. So yes, a lot of reading, a lot of sitting with the spirits. There was one, gosh, who was it? I'm not recalling exactly, but like up to an hour before we were supposed to get started, she was like, no, I'm not doing this with you. Don't talk for me. Don't. And I was like, what?
That was Tony Kate Bambara.
Was it Tony Kate? Yeah.
That was when we had the thunderstrike.
Yes. So I ended up going to the lake, pouring libation, and I think she felt like I wasn't as prepared as I could be. And I was like, I cannot be an expert on all of you. I'm just maybe for some people reminding them about you, for some people introducing you to them, and then they can go and do more research. I'm not trying, but she had an attitude with me. I was like, oh my God.
That was the one where and
then we had the thunderstorm. She was like, I don't know what you're doing. Click, we're turning this off. Literally.
Half done.
Literally, yeah.
So it's technically 26 and a half. So she will be the half. It's 26 and a half.
Yeah, that was that. Thank you for reminding me. I was like, I got the wig. I got the Afro wig. My daughter had it from something else you'd done. And I remember that. But she was just battling me the whole time. I was
it was dedicated.
And then, thunderstorm and the internet went out and I couldn't get back on.
Yeah.
Let me see. Lorna says, learning about these women of resistance gives me encouragement. She thanks both of us. Thank you, Lorna.
Thank you.
We feel it when you get in character. You're such a blessing to these ancestors. Thank you. Thank you. She says, you aced Nina Simone. I watched it twice.
Yeah.
Nina's energy was ridiculous.
I mean, the woman is.
She was a whirlwind.
Yeah.
She was a whirlwind.
Listening to our interview alone, you get a sense that what it would have been like being around her. You'll have been, yes, I can see you over there. You look very ravishing.
She was definitely going to speak her mind. So even like when we did Miriam Makeba, she has a very sweet spirit, but that exile really
crushed her.
Yeah, it really did. She never told. And when her daughter died, it was really hard for her to continue with life. But she did. She persevered. And of course, we know worked on right to the end.
She
Died
died.
literally a
She
few
died
steps from
singing.
the stage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, but definitely, they say there's a saying that we die twice. One, when we physically die and make our transition, and two, when people stop calling our names.
Mm.
And so, the sense that I've gotten from these women is also just, besides Mama Tony Cade, is gratitude.
Yeah,
For
she
keeping
moved
their names
different.
alive.
She
Yeah.
moved different. And so, yes, it's on to the next 13. And next week, you want to tell the audience who will.
Well, so next week we are hoping that it's going to be Hatshepsut. I'm going to her temple. We've already seen so much of her at the museums that we've already been to. Right now, her energy has not given me an okay yet, but we still have a week to go. So we'll see. She's already, I think she might change her mind, but she's already said, don't even try to dress up like me. And I was like,
I got you.
because then I'd have to find that beard and all of that stuff. Head on. So I don't know. So the goal is Hatshepsut next week while I'm still here in Egypt, and that's going to be interesting because the energy, and it's almost a full moon, and there's just a lot going on, and so we shall see. At any rate, we will talk about her however she wants to be talked about. We hope, yes.
Yes. Thank you to you. On to the
Thank
next.
you to you. This wouldn't be happening without you.
No,
So
well, thank you for allowing it to happen, because it's one thing for one to speak to what they intend to do. It's another thing allowing somebody else to, nudge you in that direction. Let's just say that.
Well, and since we're being relatively informal today, people should know, like, you want an Adesoji in your life. He's on a very personal note, my brother, I'm third in my family. He was number 4. Became an ancestor in 2021, and I really feel like God was like, okay, we're going to give you another brother. It doesn't replace your brother, but we're going to help you out here. So he's truly like a brother from another mother to me. And he's just so pushy. Like, you want people in your life that, and I think you see that also in the lives of the women that we've talked about, is they did not move alone, and they had some community at different points in life. There were different people who motivated them and kicked them in the butt and supported them to some extent, even though there were also intense moments of loneliness for most of them. And so you want someone like Adesoji in your life who says, okay, that's just not going to be an idea. That's just going to be something you're talking about. Like, we're going to do it. And here's the date. And we're pressing record. And you're like, oh my God, I have to, like,
Yeah.
get it. Because I know I would not have been doing this. I didn't think I had the time. I had all kinds of reasons why this was not the time. And yeah, you made it happen. And I don't like you, but I appreciate you.
I know. I mean, when that first list of 10 came your way, you're probably screaming your head out like, what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there are times when I'm like, how am I going to read all these books? Some are refreshers, but some I'm reading I'm like, oh my God, because it's every 7 days. And I have this other life and other things, but like, okay, we're going to do it. So it's great to have someone like you who doesn't take no for an answer. And yeah, thank you.
No, you're welcome. Glad to be of help. Because I find oftentimes what happens is reading Aikwama, you find if you just listen, not just even read the books, sometimes just listen to yourself read the book, you find there's an element of loneliness in the vision he holds. He holds a vision that things can be like this, but because you don't have that support structure, you find you're just traveling down that road. And sometimes the anger or the disappointment also comes out in said writing. You see it. And, so
I have to ask you a question. What has been the impact on you hearing all these stories, being part of this?
So for me, it's not just the fact that they were women. It's the fact that they were Black women. I mean, let us settle in. Everywhere these people have been, they've been impacted by things that were completely out of their control. But despite that, they've said, you know what? I am going to thunder through this thing and nothing. So sometimes you find, even when it seems as if the odds are what's the lady we did? The Haitian lady. Her name escapes me now. Where she said she looked around her. They didn't have that many bullets, but she looked to the men and she told them, we are going to battle through this. Half of the problems we have in the world can be won just by a change of mindset. Because we have this thing about, what am I going to do? What can I do?
Or we're waiting for someone else to do it.
Exactly. But sometimes, you know what? I am willing to sacrifice myself for this thing. Because half of the times, the people who oppress you or who exploit you because they have this feeling that you're not going to fight back. And so they ride on it. And you know what a bully does? When a bully can get away with something, it's not going to leave you just because he did it the first time. Keep coming back. So for me, the lesson I take from it is the resilience. That resilience is like, you know what? I am going to do this. I am regardless. Lucy Parsons.
How have you felt when we talk about the aspects of these women's lives of that double oppression, of their relationships with men? How have you felt about almost a recurring theme with
I mean,
how men are interacting with women and interacting with Black women?
Again, not making excuses. Again, the way society has socialized the two genders, first and foremost, is you've been told you can be like us if you do certain things. Now, the question is, who is us? You are only as good as what they allow you to be. But here are the women telling you, no, I'm not going to take somebody's second. I am going to be a first in my own right. And so basically, this is what we're going to do. And like you were saying earlier, it's not just the women that will say, get back in line. It's the men that will also say, get back in line. And so you find, oftentimes than not, it's the men who are they are the invisible guardians of colonialism, of imperialism. They're there, they're like constantly telling you, this is your role. That is your role. I was talking to somebody the other day and they mentioned this thing that we often look at the world through the lens of those who have oppressed us until you get a redress with regards to the mindset. All your problems will continue as long as you have that focus that, you talked about earlier, you work all the time, and for you to relax, you go and spend the money to relax, only to go back and work. So you have this circle of, so it's mind-boggling that sometimes you just need to sit still, which brings us back to what we do here. The reading allows you to sit still, and then you then notice things that have been around you all this while. They're like, what's there? That's there. This is there. This is why this happens. That is why this happens. Instead of constant churning, So for me, it's what I've gained is the ability to further sit still. That's one. And two is also to learn from the women. as to...
Well, but you've been learning from women, because I know that you've talked about your grandmother's impact on your life.
Yes.
So that makes a difference.
Yeah. So you get a sense that is an added bonus. I mean, sometimes you just listen to the women. Just listen.
Listen to us, not sometimes, all the time.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. I mean, you're not going to be around them all the time.
No. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
When you do, just listen. Just listen, and you gain something. So, yeah.
All right, let's see if there are any other comments before we sign off here. Someone said, you seem so sweet and so very smart.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I want to thank some of you have been here from, it seems like, day one. Actually, here in Egypt, I've met Lisa. She introduced herself and she says, I'm the one who's always typing. I watch you guys. She's probably asleep now because it's 3:30 here.
It'll be,
we were up early and we got in late, and we got to be up tomorrow morning by God's grace. Well, up later this morning. But so we're very grateful for all of you who've watched and given feedback, and it makes the work. I mean, it's work I would do anyway, but it's certainly helpful to know we're not just talking to ourselves.
That's true. It's So that said, we're doing. Who we doing next week? Okay.
By God's grace.
Yeah, if you get the permission to do it, we'll be doing the episode. And do all the good stuff. Share, like, subscribe, and until next week.
Thank you.
Until next week, it's good night and God bless. That is it for this episode of Women and Resistance. Thank you for joining us in amplifying the voices of women who challenged injustice and changed the course of history. Be sure to subscribe, share, and continue the conversation. Together, remember, we honor the past, act in the present, and shape the future. Until next time, stay inspired and stay in resistance.